Here it goes, Donna. Ready?
Justin, if it's not taken, we're blaming you though, okay?
Oh, don't worry, I got this.
Don't be calling him out right here. Well, I am very honored to be with you. I know the circumstance is a difficult one, but we've come to celebrate the life of David Robert Friedman, lovingly known as Dave, as Dad, as Papa, and Grandpa.
Yes, that's me.
Yeah.
Yeah, you call him Grandpa and Papa?
Yes, that.
Okay.
I said that. I said Daddy. That's my Papa.
Yeah. Well, we know him as
That's Papa. That's
a
Papa.
man who was a devoted husband, a loving father, caring grandfather, a good brother, and a true friend.
It's over there.
This is really the kind of setting that reminds us of our own mortality and of life's uncertainties. And I suppose of all the things that you've said about him, the one thing you probably never heard him claim was to be perfect. But aren't you glad that perfection is not a requirement for being loved? The Bible teaches us that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. And so we understand that God's mercy and grace and forgiveness are ours, not because we deserve it, but because we so desperately need it. One writer said, if God didn't forgive, then heaven would be empty. So I'm glad I know about his forgiveness. Aren't you? Now, how do you capture someone's life in just a few words, in the turn of a phrase, or in a simple gesture? You really can't. But a eulogy is created out of experiences that you've shared together. And I'm thankful that Jackie is going to come and share some words of honor and tribute. And if there's anyone else after she speaks, you're welcome. Jackie?
I feel as if I'm representing David's brother, Jeffrey, our other cousin, also David, and there's a humorous story about that, and the rest of the family who couldn't be here. And you notice I'm calling him David because I knew David from the day he was born. He's the youngest of our cousins, and we were a small group to begin with. But he entered the family with his red hair and with his adorable little face, and there wasn't a moment of peace among us when he was there. David could do no wrong among our grandparents. My mother, may she rest in peace, was his godmother. And when his brother Jeffrey and I would play outside at our grandparents' house, and David would act up, we would go inside and complain about him. But what we would be told is, he's just a little boy, he's just a little baby, let him be. The wonderful thing about David is that he was always able to engage everyone and everything around him. When you look at the pictures that Richard put together so lovingly, you see a few animals that are kind of entering David's space. I was there when the picture was taken, when the cat was about to eat his food from those little chairs, and David's going like this, and what David was saying was, you can't eat my food, cat, it's my food. He had a special relationship with everyone who he was surrounded by. Jeffrey and I used to try and have secrets from him, and we would talk in Pig Latin. How many of you remember Pig Latin? We would talk in Pig Latin, but of course David quickly caught on. And we realized that there was no way David was ever going to be anything but the cherished child among us, and we better fall in line and be sweet and loving to him. I remember when he was bar mitzvahed, And it was my first year at college, and I wasn't supposed to come home, but there was no way that I was going to miss his bar mitzvah. So I flew home from Boston to New Jersey and surprised him. And he did a beautiful, beautiful bar mitzvah. I remember when he met Sis. I remember the wedding. It was a beautiful, beautiful wedding. I remember when he became a policeman. And I took him aside and I said, what are you going to do if they call you into a building and there's a spider in there? Because David never got over his fear of spiders. Am I right?
Oh, definitely.
He whispered to me and he said, you know, Jackie, I'm going to call for backup. As our years went on, our paths took different turns. But as his parents and my parents said, whenever there would be a crisis or whenever one of us would need the other, we would be there. David moved to Orlando. We lived in Boca Raton and now in Naples. David knew that I got his father's love of martinis. And last time he came and visited me, he brought me this giant martini glass. I said, is this big enough? It has a cherished space with all our corks in it. When David became sick, we talked almost every single day. And we ended every conversation by saying, I love you. It's hard for me to imagine that I'm here honoring my baby cousin. And in fact, the last words that I said to him on Saturday morning were, you will always be my baby cousin. David had a way of endearing himself, and David had a way of being there when you needed him, for everyone, whether it was friend, family, or the animals in his backyard. He will live on in our hearts, and I know you join me in cherishing who David was. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to share a word? I think when we talk about family, we always focus in on three things. We talk about cherished moments and shared joys and forever memories. And we all have those. He was born and raised in New Jersey, relocated to West Virginia, but the weather was a little to his disliking. And so Florida became home in 2010. He was a terrific guy, a man of his word, straightforward in sharing his opinions and his advice. He would help anyone in need, was very supportive, had a great sense of humor. Was an excellent husband and father, lived for his grandchildren, met his bride in New Jersey on the CB, and that connection lasted almost 38 years. At his passing, he is survived by his wife, Evelyn, his son, Richard, and his wife, Jennifer, and the grandchildren, Alexandra. And it's Michaela? Michelle. Okay, it is Michelle. All right. Michelle and Samuel. And Samuel. We didn't forget Samuel. His brother Jeffrey and his wife Joan. Extended family that includes Jackie and Dana. He was preceded in death by his parents, Erwin and Janice, a son Eric, and a grandson James. His resume reveals a 25-year career in law enforcement, finishing as a forensic detective. His first job was in his father's photo shop, and that really kind of set up for what he would do as a forensic detective, taking photographs and being skilled with the eye that it takes as a photographer. He installed alarm systems, and he also taught sailing So he was a man of many trades, skills and abilities. His non-working hours found him enjoying life as he watched television, shows related to his work or to his son's work. There was camping, building of models, both airplanes and boats, watching old movies, time on the computer, sailing, riding his motorcycle. Now, not just any motorcycle, those were custom cruisers made for him and his wife to ride on. But I know that time with his family was always the most satisfying. He struggled with COPD, then was diagnosed with cancer 6 months ago, and he fought hard, but compounding complications became more than his body could overcome. He was raised in the Jewish faith, but he also acknowledged the Catholic faith. He was private when it came to his personal belief, but we think he really was a believer. And I think if there was one thing he would say to us, it's the relationship we have with the Lord is the key to life now and forever. So I don't want you to be deceived by outward appearances. We're in a place dedicated to death, but the Lord is here. Remember his words. He said, I'll be with you always, even until the end of the age. And this is an always moment. So I hope you sense his presence. And for the believer, death is not the end of life. It is the beginning of a new life in a place that he's prepared called heaven. As we think about our lives and how we live it, we write our own eulogy. There's a poem written by Linda Ellis called The Dash. I think of the dash often because I find myself in the cemetery. I look at headstones and I see the family name and then the names of individuals. And under their names traditionally are two dates, a date of birth and a date of passing. And separating those two dates on the ancient tombstones is a little dash. Her poem is called The Dash. Maybe you've heard it. It goes like this. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of his friend. He referred to the dates on his tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of his birth, and he spoke of the second with tears. But he said what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. For that dash represents all the time he spent alive on earth. And now only those who loved him know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left. You could be at dash mid-range. If we could just slow down enough to consider what's true and what's real, and always try to understand the way that other people feel, and be less quick to anger, and show appreciation more, and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering this special dash might last but a little while. So when your eulogy is being read with your life's actions to rehash, would you be pleased with the things they have to say about how you spent your dash? It's hard to imagine that Dave's dash has been spent. But life's parameters are really very simple, aren't they? There's one way into the world, through the womb through which we all came, and there's only one way out of this world, through the tomb through which we'll all exit. The Hebrew writer says, it is appointed unto man once to die and then to face the judgment. I think very few of us ever think about the fact we're going to die, and it doesn't matter what our age is. From our teens to our 30s or our 60s or our 90s or well past 100, we never imagine we're going to die. But you know, statistically speaking, 1 out of 1 dies. So it's going to happen to every one of us. And that's why the psalmist says, all the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. So God knew before David was ever born the day he would die. Just like he knows the day you and I are going to die, and we will. But when death comes, it's not a punishment, but a transition. It is the changing from the venue of this world that is temporary to the realm of eternity, where we behold God face to face. The word death itself actually means separation. And it speaks of that moment in time when the soul, the eternal being that we are, that animates our bodies, leaves the body.